Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That So Po, and today I am doing my anticipated releases for the second quarter of 2023, so April, May, and June. So I've got 15 books here that sound like they're gonna be so good. I had such a hard time narrowing this down to just 15 books, but these are all books that are coming up in the next few months, and I really want to get to reading them. So first on April 4th, we've got Starting from Scratch by Jazz Taylor. So this is a middle grade in the Wish novel series by Scholastic. I've read another book that Jazz Taylor published before this called Meow or Never that was absolutely adorable. So I can't wait to pick this up. And Jazz Taylor is the pen name also for Jessica Lewis, who wrote Bad Witch Burning, which is just one of my favorite books. I love that. But Jazz Taylor is like her middle grade pseudonym. And this is just a story about a girl who's dealing with having a blended family where her stepsister seems perfect and everybody loves her, and it feels like she doesn't have a place anymore, except her stepsister's cat actually likes hanging out with her. So it sounds like it's going to deal with some really interesting family dynamics and just be really lovely, because I know Jazz Taylor is going to have lovely stuff. Also on April 4th is No Sweet Without Brine by Cynthia Manick. This is a poetry collection about sort of Black feminist self-love and celebration of Black culture. It sounds like it celebrates both the sorrows and the joys of life, and it just really sounds like it's going to deal with some of the themes that I love to see in my poetry. Plus, Roxane Gay, who is a favorite author of mine, gave this 5 stars, so I really want to give it a try. Then on April 11th is No Edges, edited by Sarah Coolidge. So this is a collection of translated Swahili African futurist short stories. So I love SFF short story collections. I've been trying to read more translated works, and I don't think that I've ever read any Swahili translated works before. These are stories from like Kenya and Tanzania, so I think this is going to be really, really cool stuff. Also on April 11th is A Spoonful of Time by Flora. This is a middle grade contemporary fantasy that is about a girl who loves to cook with her grandma. They cook a lot of Korean food, and then one day she discovers that her grandmother's cooking can actually time travel, so they can be transported back in time to Korea, and they end up with her learning more about their family history. So this has food, it has kind of magic, it has culture, all of my buzzwords, so I think I'll love this one. On April 18th, there is Pardalita by Joana Estrela, translated from Portuguese by Miller-Lachmann. So this is a YA graphic novel published by Levine Querido. I always love what they're putting out. That is about a teenage girl who is having some problems at home and at school, but she ends up kind of thrown into contact with an older girl when they're working on the school play, and they end up kind of falling in love. So this sounds like it's very slice of life and this sort of coming of age story, and it's a graphic novel, so again, all of my buzzwords. On May 2nd is The Private Apartments by Idman Noor Omar, which is a collection of interconnected short stories about Somali immigrants, really with a feminist lens. I love immigrant stories and I love short stories, so I think that I will really like this one. On May 16th is No One Will Come Back for Us by Premee Mohamed, which is a collection of SFF short stories. Again, love short stories, and this is by an author whose work I have absolutely adored. Last year I read a bunch of her novellas, These Lifeless Things, and What Can We Offer You Tonight, and The Annual Migration of Birds, that I thought were just so fantastic. So when I heard that she was coming out with a short story collection, I was like, I definitely want to pick this up because I love her writing. Then on May 30th is Her Good Side by Rebekah Weatherspoon, who's another author that I absolutely love. Rebekah Weatherspoon wrote the Cowboys of California series, which starts with A Cowboy to Remember, that is like contemporary romance, and this is a YA romance. So I'm really excited to see what she's going to do with this. And this is about 2 teenagers who are kind of awkward and decide to fake date each other so that they can gain enough experience so that then they can, feel confident enough and approachable enough that they can date other people, but maybe they start to have feelings about each other. Also on May 30th is another book by another favorite author, which is Witch King by Martha Wells. Martha Wells wrote the Murderbot series, which starts with All Systems Red, that I absolutely love. So again, when I heard she was coming out with something new, I knew I wanted to pick it up. So this is a fantasy that is about a demon whose kind of consciousness has been trapped for many, many years, and he's been sort of out of the world until an unskilled mage ends up awakening him, and they have to kind of discover kind of all the plots and intrigue and what's been going on. Then on June 6th is Pedro and Daniel by Frederico Erebia, illustrated by Julie Kwon, that is basically a YA coming-of-age story about two Mexican-American brothers in Ohio in the 1970s who are queer and neurodivergent. But even though these brothers have a lot in common, they often have a lot of differences between them. So it's just their kind of coming-of-age story and that kind of what they do with their lives and how they become adults. It does sound like this story has quite a few content warnings, by the way, but Levine Querido, which is the publisher, lists them on the Goodreads page, so if you're interested, you could check those out. Also on June 6th is Page Boy by Elliot Page. This is a celebrity memoir that I heard was coming out from Kevvie at Say Kevvie, who I'll link below, and I was immediately intrigued. I have seen a lot of Elliot Page's work, just, he's been a really big, important actor for the past decade or two. And so when I heard that he was coming out with a memoir, I love listening to memoirs on audio, so this is definitely one that I want to get to. And one more book coming out on June 6th is Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. So this is a historical fiction set in 15th century China that is based on a real woman who was a physician, and she ended up kind of forming this circle of women to kind of support each other when, after she got married, her mother-in-law really didn't want her to continue being a doctor, and that was kind of what her passion was, and she was very influential, I believe, in the development of a lot of medical practices in China. So this sounds like it'll be fantastic historical fiction. Then on June 13th is The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. So this is a science fantasy that has a really interesting premise, basically kind of post-eco collapse, where humanity now lives on these floating islands in the sky, and there are very powerful people called architects who are maintaining that sort of status quo. And we follow a man who's an architect and is trying to deal with that, but also maybe breaking some rules in what he's doing, and his wife, who is really recognizing that there's a lot of inequality in their society and wants him to help her fight against that, and kind of the conflict between them. So having a kind of science fantasy that is set around this couple is going to be a really interesting story, it sounds like. Also on June 13th is A Right-Worthy Woman by Ruth P. Watson, which is a historical fiction also based on a real woman, Maggie Walker. And this is set in the kind of late 19th, early 20th century, about this woman who was somebody who kind of decided that community was really important to her, and she wanted to make sure that her community was successful. She was a teacher, and then she founded a newspaper, and she founded a department store, and she was the first Black woman bank founder. So she was somebody who just kind of worked hard to make sure that her community prospered, and it sounds like, again, this is going to be such cool historical fiction. And then lastly, on June 20th is Family Style by Thien Pham, which is a graphic memoir about Pham and his family being refugees from Vietnam and moving to California, and the role that food played in their kind of search for belonging and home. I love graphic memoirs, I love refugee stories, I love food, so I think that I'm going to adore this one. Okay, so those are my anticipated releases for the second quarter of 2023, April, May, and June. There are so many books that sound so amazing and I'm really excited about. If you guys have heard of any of these, if you're interested in them, or if there's other books that you're excited about for the second quarter, I'd love to hear about it. Just leave me a comment down below.